In today's session, we are going to start with the new tutorial on Salesforce. Before we are moving toward the topic Salesforce, we should know about the cloud computing. So we are going to start with introduction to cloud computing and what we are going to cover in this topic. What is cloud computing? Then what are the different characteristics of cloud computing? What are the different types of clouds? And what are the different cloud computing services? Software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. And what are the different service provider regarding these three services, that is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Where cloud computing is a new trend in IT development, deployment, and delivery module of business products, where services that are being provided over internet are being used by a real-time user. Where what we have done or what we can do, what are the different shared resources like as hardware and software that we are able to use or access from all over the globe by different service providers. Here, as per NIST, the cloud computing is defined as: cloud computing is a model for enabling ubiquitous, convenient, on-demand network access to shared pool of configurable computing. The resources that can be rapidly provisioned and released within the minimal management effort or service provider interaction. Means we are able to access whatever required resources like as hardware as well as the software that we can access using the service provider interaction over the globe from the internet. This definition is provided by as per US National Institute of Standard and Technology for the cloud computing. As before we have said, the cloud computing is a ubiquitous environment, where in ubiquitous means we can cover overall things regarding the that we can access easily using the internet or over the internet from the globe, such as we are able to develop applications, we are able to use software as well as hardware, such as mobile services, email, messaging, video calling. All these types of services what we are able to access over the internet from the globe are included in cloud computing. This sample image shows that how the cloud computing environment has been built, where we can conclude all the resources from the globe and anyone can able to use that resources or shared resources as per demand or on demand. About cloud computing: through computing we can use the resources over the internet from anywhere in the globe without managing resources like as application, databases, operating system, and network. Where in this area what we are going to do, we don't need to install any types of software or we don't need to interfere or change do the changes in operating system or databases or inside network. We can directly able to use the resources over the internet from anywhere in the globe. In general, that is the example for the cloud computing. Basic example has been given there. In general, to use any resources like as MS Office, we have to install that software in our device. If you want to use that MS Office service in another device, we have to install that software again. Instead of that, what we are going to do, we are going to access the resource from the globe from the service provider, and we don't need to install that software again and again for different machine. We don't need to buy the licensed software as well as we don't need to install. We can directly able to use that resource from the service provider as per our demand. The need of cloud computing: most of the organization spends several $1 million each year on the purchasing of hardware and software for their employees. These purchases include not just computers, laptop, but also the softwares and software licenses. For every new employee, we have to buy a new software license or we have to buy a new hardware. That means that for every employee increment, we have to buy a new hardware as well as software. That is financially draining for any organization, that one is big or small. So instead of that, what we can do, we can just use the shared resources over the internet and we don't need to buy hardware or software, and that will save our money as well as the time. What has made a cloud computing work is tremendous growth in processing power. We can use the more capability hardware so that we can able to process or increase our processing power, reliability of internet. Anywhere from the globe we are able to access the internet or resources from the internet, and great increase in the broadband speed. Also the increase in the speed of internet will affect to use, or we can able to use the cloud computing resources which are shared on the internet anywhere from the globe, where these resources make suitable to access the different hardware as well as the software requirement fulfill to fulfill the various organizations requirement as per their project, and this can be provided by different service provider by their demand. It makes tremendous sense to make use of the centralized server of the provider of the cloud computing services, as not only does they reduce the cost by great extent by making the redundant need to buy several software licenses, it also eliminates the huge cost required by an organization to maintain, that is for maintenance and upgradation of existing software. So using the cloud computing resources, it also saves the organization time as well as money, or reduce the cost instead of buying the software licenses or upgrading the existing software. These both are the major advantages of cloud computing. There are other advantages also of the cloud computing. These are some other advantages of cloud computing. Drastically reduces the cost of hiring the software engineers and other specialized workers for IT support. Means whenever we are going to buy a software or we want to install the software or some hardware inside our organization, that time we need some specialized software engineers to install for the installation of that software, as well as some IT support staff to maintain, to take the maintenance and take the review of that hardware as well as the software. So using the cloud computing reduce that use of the more amount of software engineers as well as the IT support staff. Also cloud computing eliminates the need for the organization to buy a hardware. Plenty of physical space has been saved. If we are going to buy a new hardware every time, whenever we are going to hire a new employee, that time we require new hardware as well as the software. Buying a hardware, we require a space to put that hardware installed inside the organization. So by using the internet resources or hardware resources on the internet, shared on the internet by the service provider, we are going to save the plenty of space inside our organization, and reducing such a number of employee as well as saving the plenty of hardware space will save the cost drain of the organization every year in terms of, or in amount of more cost, or in amount of more resources also. Just like as advantages, there are very few disadvantages of using cloud computing. These are, as there are very few drawbacks of the cloud computing. While cloud computing removes the need of to hire the software engineer or to buy a several new software license and eliminates the cost of software upgrade and maintenance, it does have very few drawbacks. Means whenever we are going to remove the need of software engineer, that time we are going to create unemployed engineers, and another way is we are going to make the loss of some software sellers as well as the hardware sellers. So we are don't going to hire the employees and buy the software license as well as the softwares as well as the hardware. These are the some drawbacks of the cloud computing which we have to face while we are using the cloud computing resources over the internet. Thank you. Further topics will be covered in the next section.